Judge and timer ready? Ready?
Yep.
Video camera? Alright. Justice is the firmest pillar of government. George Washington. It is because I agree with George Washington and believe that individual rights lead to justice that I stand resolved. A government's legitimacy is not determined more by popular sovereignty, but by individual rights. Now this is a pretty wordy and confusing resolution, so let me just break it down real quick. I'm basically saying that the majority will of the people is not what determines a government. It's a certain standard of rights. Now, the affirmative gave a definition of legitimacy as exactly as purposed. However, I do not agree with this definition. Purpose, as she said, is very broad. Purpose can be just about anything, and very often this purpose can be bad. Take, for example, the Japanese Americans after Pearl Harbor. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the majority of America decided that because they were afraid that the Japanese might do something again, they were going to put all the Japanese American citizens in internment camps. Now, these were not the Japanese that bombed Pearl Harbor. There was no connection there anywhere. They were Japanese American, they were citizens of America. But the popular sovereignty decided that they were afraid, and so they chose to disrespect the Japanese Americans' right to liberty and put them in camps. So instead, I give the alternate definition by PhD John Simmons. He's a PhD he's a Commonwealth professor of philosophy and a professor of law. And this is what he believes a government's legitimacy is. A government's legitimacy is a complex moral right. It possesses to be the exclusive imposer of binding duties on its subjects, to have its subjects comply with these duties, and to coincide to enforce the duties. So, a government is legitimate when it does the duties that they are. And those duties I'll be going farther into later is to respect individual rights. My value and the value that should be held highest in today's debate round is justice. Justice is defined as rendering everyone his due or right, merited reward or punishment. So basically, justice is ensuring that people's rights are being respected and that those who do not respect rights are equally punished for it. Now, before we go any further in today's debate round, I want to clarify something. I am not taking the stance in any way that popular sovereignty is altogether bad. I believe that it can help a government. However, by itself, popular sovereignty can be extremely dangerous. Contention 1. Justice leads to legitimacy. Justice leads to legitimacy. Without justice, a government can easily become lawless and tyrannical. This is why justice is so important. It keeps popular sovereignty in check, so to speak. It sets up boundaries. Now, as I said before, popular sovereignty isn't all bad. It just has to be balanced correctly with justice. If justice is being upheld, it keeps a government from becoming a tyranny. And as I said before, individual rights and justice are linked because justice is the ensuring of individual rights being upheld and those being punished for those who do not respect rights. And so, contention 2 is that popular sovereignty hurts justice. People's God-given rights are life, liberty, and property. But people don't always have these rights. Let's look at the following example and the reason behind the people's rights being disrespected. That example is that of the Salem witch trials, where 19 men and women were hanged on charges of witchcraft. Most were hanged, a lot of them were hanged without even a trial, but it was apparently justified because that was what the collective wanted. It didn't matter what the minority or the people being killed thought. And I want to clarify one more thing here. This was a government-involved thing that happened. Many people think it was not. But actually, the government did sit in on the trials, they oversaw the trials, and they let the people do what they wanted by killing these 19 men and women. So now I'd like to move on down to the affirmatives case. I already addressed her definition of legitimacy and how I do not agree with that. But her definition of individual rights that basically the basic rights that all men have, what men are due. Well, I just want to, for clarification in this round, maybe narrow it down to life, liberty, and property, especially in this day and age, as that's a very basic and mostly accepted definition of individual rights. She said that purpose of government is broad, and that violating the purpose is illegitimate by definition. Well, okay, it may be illegitimate by her definition. However, I don't agree with that definition in today's debate round, and I've presented another one which I think that you should agree with as well. She said also that the purpose of government is broad, and I agree that the purpose of government is broad, but I asked her in cross-text, I said, do you like your life, liberty, and property? Do you think I do? And the majority of people do want to uphold, to respect their life, liberty, and property, and they want their government to do that for them. However, the main problem with popular sovereignty is that the people sometimes get caught up in their own personal wishes and disregard others' life, liberty, and property, which is why popular sovereignty can be bad when it's by itself. It has to have the restrictions, it has to be going toward, it has to be respecting individual rights to be legitimate. And that's really the main purpose with popular sovereignty in general, and her whole case. She gave examples such as Russia and Canada in her second point, and I'd like to point out that these are all really for the enhancing of rights. Russia, they wanted security. Why? Because they wanted their life to be protected. Canada, now I agree, healthcare, hospital, you don't always go to that for life and death. For example, I broke my thumb before Christmas, and I went to the hospital to get it looked at and to get it patched up. And that may not have been a life and death situation. However, it was still, although it may have felt like that at the time, but it was still enhancing my right to life. It was helping my whole body grow correctly. So it may not have been I was about to die, but it was enhancing my life. So, because of popular sovereignty without restrictions can become tyrannical, either the tyranny of the majority or the tyranny of a government, because it can become tyrannical without boundaries, it is illegitimate by itself. It has to be leading towards something, and that something that it needs to be leading toward is the respect for individual rights. When we're heading toward the respect for individual rights, popular sovereignty can help. However, it's not the main issue in today's debate round. It's not the main thing that gets us to legitimacy. Thank you, and I now stand open for cross-examination.
All right, how are you doing today, Rebecca?
I'm doing pretty good.
Great. All right, let's start off. You talked about the Japanese internment camps. Now, who decided to put the Japanese in prison?
Popular sovereignty.
Was this not a presidential edict?
Well, the president did enforce it, however, it was obvious at that time that that was what the collective wanted.
Did they take a poll?
I'm not sure, but
okay,
it was pretty obvious.
Now, what was the purpose? Why did they throw them in the camps in the first place? They just, hey, let's throw some Japanese in prison?
The people were scared. And
scared of what?
They were scared that they might get hurt. However,
they were scared because the Japanese had just posed a threat to national security.
Not the Japanese American citizens of America. These were the Japanese completely separate.
Say there's a terrorist attack from Iran. Would there be a danger here from Iranian citizens, not necessarily citizens, but even immigrants, and we might watch out for them? Would that be a problem?
Watch out maybe, but I don't think we need to throw them in internment camps.
Okay, but the purpose of the internment camps was to protect the lives of the American citizens.
That's what they thought.
Okay, and this was carried out by the president?
By the people's will, but yes.
By the president. All right, let's move on down. What was your definition of legitimacy again? Would you mind reading that again?
Sure. It's a quote from John Simmons. It's, a government's legitimacy is the complex moral right it possesses to be the exclusive imposer of binding duties on its subjects, to have its subjects comply with these duties, and to use... Do
you mind if I can hold
Yeah,
that?
sure,
Okay,
go ahead.
Great. All right, so it says it's carried out the duties. Now, who defines these duties?
These duties are
chosen by the government?
Life, liberty, and property.
Okay. Did you present, what was the problem you presented with my definition?
Exactly as purposed?
Yes.
Well, that purpose...
what was the flaw in the definition?
Purpose doesn't lead to legitimacy because of what it can also lead to. It can lead
Okay, so basically because purpose is bad, it can't define legitimacy.
Because purpose
can be bad.
Purpose is illegitimate because we don't. It can't lead to a legitimate government because the people could basically do anything.
Okay, great. All right. Would you say that a government should protect, say, life? Yes. Right.
Yes.
Okay, liberty.
Yes.
Okay. What happens if these two conflict?
In that instance, popular sovereignty would probably choose which to respect, but the fact is that they were heading toward
Does the resolution say that when we're upholding rights, we have to look to the people to decide which is more important, or simply that the government will respect rights?
The resolution doesn't state that we have to look to the people. But
okay.
The point I was making
Moving
was
on
that
down, of all the standards you presented, why justice? Why should justice establish legitimacy?
Justice ensures the protecting and